Throughout the Clone Wars and beyond, non-Force sensitive equalists around the galaxy believed that those who wielded the Force were oppressing them and holding them down from their true power. As a result, some of these equalists got together to create a devastating weapon which allowed them to wield a power resembling the Force, hoping to gain the upper hand on Force users. The device was considered an unnatural abomination which tried to make the Force a slave to humanity, which honestly terrified most Force users. So let's break down the Repulse hand and why it was despised by almost every Force user. And before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed for more content just like this. The Repulse hand was a weaponized prosthetic which was created and manufactured by a cybernetics company called Control Zone Limited. This company specialized in creating prosthetic limbs and weapons, and it was rumored that their leadership had a strong hatred for anyone who was lucky enough to be granted the ability to use the Force. And that would definitely explain why they created this company in the first place. Either way, not long after forming the company, they devised a brand new cybernetic weapon which served as a replacement for biological hands. To use this device, you'd have to have your hands surgically removed and replaced with this new technology, which might seem gruesome, but for those who hated Force users to their core, this was only a small price to pay. Unlike most prosthetics sold in the galaxy, the company chose not to coat this one with synth skin, which was almost indistinguishable from real human skin, mostly so that the users of it could strike fear into their enemies when they saw it. Also because they probably wanted to increase their brand recognition and get more people to use their product. On top of this, the company also refused to place a sensory interface in the device, which would usually allow its user to feel things, because if they did include it, they would constantly feel a crushing pain due to the technology that they were using to replicate the Force. For the users of this weapon, presentability was never a concern. They simply wanted sheer power. Now, the technology that powered this fake Force hand were a group of miniature repulsor generators, similar to those used in large capital ships, but obviously on a much smaller scale. This made the hand an absolutely brutal weapon to use in close combat, and it was able to parry and block weapons away with ease, including lightsabers, because the blade would never make contact with the prosthetic thanks to those repulsors. And in the rare event that it was struck by the saber, let's just say the wearer would be very thankful that the sensory interface was not included. On top of this, the hand could push and pull objects remotely, although at a much shorter distance than a real Force user. In addition to that, if the user managed to make contact with the flesh of an enemy, the Repulse hand would leave a horribly deep gash torn into the opponent's flesh, even crushing the bones beneath the skin. An absolutely horrifying prospect for real Force users. Finally, the weapon was deemed to be a brutal, immoral device, and those who used it were condemned for having no concern for law or morality. And of course, that was coming from an ally of Force users, so take it with a grain of salt. I'll let you decide if this weapon was morally wrong to use. So that is the horrifying weapon which gave non-Force users the power of the Force, albeit in a limited fashion. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.